It's Farhad. Hello everybody, my name is Farhad. Welcome to my channel where I talk about absolutely anything, everything, nothing really happens, just like my actual life. I'm doing a lot of this, not enough of this.
Oh, now we gotta go?
So around this time last year, I made a video on YouTube called Influencers Are Lying to You, Why TikTok's That Girl trend is toxic. And I started to get very concerned about the very real impacts that trends like that girl would have on young, impressionable women and young girls who are kind of force-fed these unattainable lifestyles that really are designed to make them feel bad about their current situation so that they are persuaded to buy into a certain lifestyle through sponsored products. You know, that video ended up getting 100,000 views, I think. Got up to like 5,000 subscribers. Hello, I see you. Which I genuinely just still can't believe that happened. Like, my channel really got taken by the algorithm. Like, seriously, where was Liam Neeson when I needed him? When I needed him most? My channel got tooken.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Anyway, I think a lot of the people who are currently subscribed to me probably met me through that video. Although feel free to comment below if you met me through a different type of video, because I'm usually quite interested to know these things. So after that video started to pick up some steam, I got really overwhelmed by just the hundreds of comments from women all around the world who were really just responding so well to what I was saying, particularly around how those That Girl videos promote wellness and self-care in really unattainable and toxic ways made to make the viewer feel bad, as well as just from people around the world who were quite worn down from very capitalist and hustle culture style videos that we were seeing, particularly throughout the pandemic. You know, it's kind of part of this bigger trend of making us feel bad about ourselves, making us feel like we're not enough in this very capitalist society, and that we always have to strive to be better, have to always be changing, have to always be improving ourselves and being productive, which again also had quite a surge in popularity in terms of like that counterculture that was starting to arise from it. But of course, there were plenty of people who disagreed with me, and they told me things like, you know, that girl trend was actually quite beneficial to their lifestyle. It helped them get motivated, it helped them put their things together and be organized and all these really great things. And you know, of course, I'm so happy that they've got that fulfillment from a trend like that. So I want to address two things in this video. Firstly, that I don't think aspiring to be that girl in and of itself is a bad thing, right? I mean, like these women had told me in my last video, it's beneficial and it's great and it helped them, you know, get their lives together and live the lives they wanted to live. So that's fantastic. What I really wanted to point out was the fact that ad companies, social media platforms, and influencers were all perhaps promoting that girl in an unhealthy way. So again, I'm not saying it's bad if you want to be that girl. It's more that I think there are other ways to kind of promote the core values of that girl in a healthier way for most people. And the second thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the evolution of that girl. It's been a year since the kind of trend really popped off, and even though it's nothing new in terms of what we see in influencer culture, it is still quite a big trend in terms of its success, notability, perhaps notoriety. So I want to talk about the evolution of that girl 1 year on, right? So what's changed? How is the trend going now? What are we starting to see other influencers do like as a countering of that girl? And how we're seeing influencers tap into other markets utilizing the same strategies they use for that girl. So strap yourselves in, besties, because this is gonna be a fun discussion. But before we begin, besties, quick reminders. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. It really helps my channel out. And if you like my general vibe, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I like to make a lot of videos about 9-to-5 culture, hustle culture, influencer culture, pop culture, that sort of thing. So if you're interested in those sorts of things, or you just like my vibe, if you just like hanging out with me and talking to me, I like talking to you, so stick around. So I want to begin this by quickly discussing the general attitudes I see of influencers and the way social media companies utilize these trends, like that girl. I spoke a little bit about this in my last video, so I won't repeat myself too much here. But one of the key points that I raised was the fact that influencers, as like marketing tools, are often trying to sell a lifestyle. People aren't just getting on camera anymore and being like, oh my god, besties, I've just tried this new skincare, it's so amazing, like, y'all have to get onto it, use my code, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really happen anymore. I think people are getting a little bit smarter than that. People are getting a little bit more sophisticated than that. And I think viewers are now a little bit smarter in the way they interact with sponsored posts, so they can see right through that shit. Instead, good influencers, keyword good, are now embedding sponsored products into their videos, into their stories, into their life, so that it seems a little bit more organic and it has a little bit more of a narrative built into it. But what I'm trying to say here is, to be exciting and to be engaging on social media, there needs to be a sense of relatability, which is why when you watch that girl videos, there tends to be a sense that anyone can become that girl. But of course, that's not the case, because we know that the algorithm tends to pick a, let's say, specific type of woman to promote, to go viral, to get lots of views and to get engagement. And that tends to be women who are younger, often Caucasian, often wealthy, often cis, often straight, often able-bodied, and more often than not, conventionally attractive. And on top of all that, the lifestyle really comes at a cost. Daily skincare regimes, specialty coffee brews, luxury workout clothing, home decor, all these things that make up the little bits of a that girl video or a that girl lifestyle. These things all cost a lot of money, and they're all ingrained into the lifestyle so deeply that you can't really escape it. And they're often sponsored in that girl videos. So again, there's that sense that there are ad companies utilizing trends to really just promote a certain lifestyle that features their products. And why is that the case? Why don't influencers just rely solely on their relatability to build a following anymore? As I said in my last video, one of the reasons is they need to be inspiring, because aspiration is the driving motivation behind loyalty. People often follow people who they want to look like, who they want to act like, who they want to talk like, who they want to dress like, who they want to cook like. So we often see influencers using their brand or relatability to then sell products on behalf of really large companies that utilize that parasocial dynamic between viewers and influencers, and that connection between them. As great as it is to be solely dependent on your relatability, as influencers get more and more of a following, they do tend to then fall into line with expected behavior, right? They need to make money, essentially, right? And that's certainly the case with that girl, right? That girl is the epitome of sponsored content pushing through to create a lifestyle. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that's a bad thing later in this video, so just hold your horses. Okay, so what actually happened to that girl? She still exists. She's still out there. She's living her best self. She is living it up in New York or LA and is, jet setting across town, having picnics in the park, doing that girl thing that she does. It's more than that, and I know it's more sophisticated than that, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, she still exists, she's still out there, but the evolution of that girl is such a clear indication of the way TikTok categorizes girl tropes. That girl was enormously successful for TikTok. It's hard to deny that. They were able to launch a whole heap of new influencers into stardom in a way that allowed companies to effectively market directly to their already established audience. It was a stroke of pure genius. Well, not really genius. It was mostly luck, but we'll get to it. But like everything on the internet, that girl quickly began being torn apart on the internet for really a lot of the reasons why I spoke about in my last video, but there's a lot of explanation as to the danger of conforming to that girl, for spreading that as a almost false promise of wellness and self-care because of the toxic undertones and the sponsorship that is all lying beneath the surface. And the problem for TikTok and their associated ad companies was the fact that those videos were very specific to a type of girl. That girl. So with the limitation in the audience, there clearly became this gap in the market to categorize and capture other young girls on the platform. So what have we seen since that girl? Recently, there's been a huge surge in all types of girls. You look at the Barbies, right? Over time, they had one standard figure, and she kind of changed over time depending on the cultural attitudes of the time. But as we go more and more progressive in our representation across all different types of media, you're starting to see different types of Barbie, different colored Barbies, different sexuality Barbies, different kind of shapes and forms, and all these different types of Barbies that now exist, all as Barbie, but in different ways. So just like that girl, now there are different types of girls that you can relate to and that you can aspire to become. There's the new clean girl with the no makeup aesthetic, the gross girl where you apparently don't clean your apartment. I'm not really sure what's going on with that one. There's the Y2K messy party girl. There's the goblin girl vibe or goblin mode. But there's all these different types of girls that are now being marketed, that are now being promoted, that are now kind of flourishing into their own little communities and their little niches, and groups of women all around the world are aspiring or at least recognizing themselves in these categories. And by capturing all these different women into neatly portioned off categories, you're able to hook them into a lifestyle that can very easily then be marketed to by TikTok and their partners and their ad partners and all that sort of stuff. And in many ways, I think the evolution is not really surprising because, you know, of course, TikTok saw the success of that girl. Like, they wanted to create a launching pad for other types of influencers, other types of content, other types of categories of marketing. I'm not saying like TikTok themselves created these trends. I mean, they might have, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people who say that there's a lot of like industry plans on TikTok, but I don't really think that's the case. I mean, it might be, but who knows? But no, these trends can form quite organically, right? It could just be this one random girl out there in the world who sees what's happening with that girl and says, not into it, let me show you what I like to do instead. And that was the creation of Goblin Girl or whatever. So while TikTok may not have created the trends, they definitely had a hand in both promoting and vastly expanding that trend to capture more and more people in a way that sees marketing opportunities then flourish because they see the potential for commodification in that trend, in that lifestyle. So what began as that girl has really continued to transform into new and more inclusive categories. So as companies and social media platforms and creators start to find more niche categories of people, we'll continue to see them utilize them as a marketing opportunity. But I think the shift away from that girl to a more varied set of sub-trends like, you know, the goblin mode, the clean girl, the gross girl, etc., means we can start to see somewhat more inclusive types of people being platformed and different types of people being promoted. And that's a good thing, right? Like, it's great to see different types of people. It's great to see that change happening. It's great to see more authentic representations of a very wide collective group of people. And it's great to see more authentic representations that have less to do with like a collective visual aesthetic and instead more about an individual mindset. You know, there's far more opportunity and spaces for young girls and women to now express themselves in a carefree way. However, I still think there is some concerning traits across all these different types of girl tropes. You know, while there is this claim that anyone can be a gross girl, a clean girl, a goblin girl, or, you know, even that girl, no matter the label you're using, the it girls always tend to be exclusively Caucasian, thin, wealthy, able-bodied, and very conventionally attractive. It's almost like a prerequisite to join the club. So in a way, we're really just creating more spaces for women who already dominate the landscape to be freer and more creative with their aesthetics. And it's particularly egregious that it's often women of color or queer women who start these counter trends, but then have them taken over by the same type of cis, straight, white women. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. So there's this kind of dichotomy between sub-trends allowing women to express and empower themselves more freely, while also adhering to the already established patriarchal hierarchies. You know, the algorithm tends to promote one kind of woman doing different things. So the algorithm is really just reducing women into these neat, tidy little categories to make it easier for companies to then advertise to and be able to market directly to that established group of people. It's quite genius, really. Like, it's genius for the companies to target these sorts of groups, but at the same time, it's quite damaging because you're reducing women to a certain type of category and also kind of implying that to be that girl or this type of girl, you need X, Y, Z. So I guess the question for all of us now is, where do we go from here, right? Will we see more of these sub-trends of that girl start to pop up? Will we see more of these counters to that girl pop up? Or will we as a collective start realizing that these trends are really just the capitalist and patriarchal systems reducing women to one of a few different yet very similar types of groups? That's really for us as a collective to really just kind of wait and see what happens. But I think as individuals, we do have the power to like reject those counter arguments and those arguments, especially the ones that come from influencers. Like, I really do hope we see a rise against that kind of influencer-led cultural promotion of categorization. But at the same time, you know, that aspiration is so enticing that it's easy to fall into, particularly when the target audience are young girls aged, you know, 12 to 24 or whatever, who are still very much developing and forming their identity. Like, of course you're going to be influenced by these kinds of girls who are getting promoted for living a certain way. And I guess it's up to us to really be a bit more aware of that. It's up to us to really call it out if we see trends that are kind of reducing women in a way where if you don't do this, then you are bad. Or if you don't do this, then you are a failure. Or if you don't do this, you're not successful. Like, we can't have that sort of discourse when it comes to people's identities. So 1 year on from that girl, we have seen a shift away from one type of it girl to a few new ones. But ultimately, they all do still remain capitalist marketing regimes to shift products through influencers. You know, it is great to see more expression. It's great to see reality a little bit more. But that expression seems to be still sponsored by your favorite wellness or lifestyle brand. And that can be both concerning and damaging when you can't actually fit into what you want to, right? If you can't fit into the type of category that you want to be in or that you aspire to be in, that's quite damaging. You know, particularly if you don't fit into those prerequisites to even get in the door, you're going to continue to feel the same shame and self-consciousness that women's magazines in the early 2000s really caused. And it's a similar sense of like getting into the mindset of young women and saying, you're not doing this right. But if you buy this product, if you buy this, if you adhere to this lifestyle, you could be a better person, and that's what you should be. You know, it's a really complex issue, and there are a lot of pros and cons to all the different types of categories and all the different types of trends that are starting to spur. And I could honestly, truly sit here for the next 5 hours and keep on riffing on all the different kinds of, you know, fallacies and problems I have with this general kind of counterculture that's arisen just from that girl. But I think I might have to wrap up now, because otherwise I will truly just be sitting here for hours and hours and hours, and nobody wants that. Certainly not you guys. So as always, besties, I just want to say thank you so much if you watched the video all the way through. I really do appreciate it. If you did watch it all the way through, I assume you're a subscriber, so thank you as always for checking in with me and hanging out with your bestie. As a little reminder, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like. It really helps my channel out. If you're interested in more discussions about influencer and hustle culture, please make sure you subscribe and turn your bell notifications on. Like, what have you got to lose? I'll be back early next week for another video, because I am doing my bit to get back into a weekly schedule. But I think that's everything I wanted to say today. So until next time, besties, bye.
Missing someone.